Hey, it's Zack, and I'm back with another episode of Elevate and Accelerate. And today I'm really excited to introduce a new guest, Tresa Chambers. She's a former business and political journalist for Time magazine and has used her expertise as a writer, an editor, a marketer, and a project manager to create and launch programs and products in corporate, academic, and community arenas around the world for over 25 years now. So she's bringing a lot of really insightful and powerful experience to the conversation today. But she's also the founder and CEO of 10th Muse Enterprises. And so as a brand marketer, content strategist, inventor, writer, and editor, she has really dedicated herself to helping authors, entrepreneurs, and artists really define and discover and connect with their target market. Really, ultimately, what she has done is been able to provide a space and platform to empower Black and Brown creative entrepreneurs and artists to increase their economic and community stability through their talents. So help me in welcoming Tresa today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hi, Zack. Thank you. It's so great to be here with you.
Yeah. And so, look, obviously, you have achieved a number of successes in many different areas, as I just kind of even tried to touch on a little bit here. But would love to hear, a little bit more about you. Where did you get your start? Where did you grow up, and what was life like for you?
Sure. So I grew up in Newport News, Virginia, which is southeastern Virginia, Hampton Roads area. And one thing about Hampton Roads is that there's a very heavy military presence. So most of the people in my community had some connection to the military, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, or the shipyard. Newport News happens to be the home of the world's largest shipbuilding company. So just a little fun fact there.
I didn't know that.
So grew up in Newport News, and I have three brothers I grew up with, and my mom and my dad. And so actually, I guess I had a very normal life in a lot of ways, lived close to the family and everything. But I was a pretty smart kid, and so I graduated from high school when I was 16. So that was different. And by the time I got to high school, I actually had changed schools 5 times, which is really weird because my parents have lived in the same place the entire time. But that was just kind of my unique experience because of being advanced in school. I skipped a grade, and also because of redistricting. We are in this political season, so you certainly know what that's about. And also because of integration. I grew up in a period where that was something that was actually emerging in our community, in our culture. So that all affected my academic experience. So graduated from high school when I was 16, went to University of Virginia for undergrad, and I was passionate about politics and international affairs and wanted to travel the world. And so I studied government and politics, ended up majoring in French, though, because I had started to study French in 8th grade and loved studying the language. And that really kind of has been the impetus of my communications experience, but loved studying French, and then studied throughout high school and into college, and just loved learning about the language and the different cultures where.
So can you still speak French?
I am fluent in French, yes.
You're fluent in French. That's amazing.
Yes. And after I graduated from college, I was 20, and I had always dreamed of going to New York City. That was something I loved. Magazines and read Vogue and all the fashion magazines, and that's where all the fashion was, and all the exciting things that were happening in the world were happening really in New York. And so I had this great dream of going to New York, and so I actually begged my parents to let me go, and hopped on a bus in the fall after I graduated. I turned 21 that summer, and Greyhound bus took me to New York City. And I went there and wanted to just find something. And I had very little money. So I had to use the little bit of money I had to find some place to find my job first. I had some place to stay for the moment, but just didn't have a lot of time, and ended up taking a job in New York that was an admin job. Found out very quickly that I'm a terrible admin. Terrible, terrible to this day.
uh,
That's not my jam. And but in the process of that, that actually took me to my journalism career, because one of my friends who I worked with
mm,
at this admin, where I was an admin, introduced me to someone who was friends with the HR director at Time Inc. And so within a year, I had gotten my job as an editorial assistant at Time Magazine, which was very exciting. And
wow.
within a year and a half, I was made a reporter researcher. I was the youngest reporter researcher they had ever had. And I
Mm,
covered business, politics, international affairs. So I loved doing the work. It was very intense. I learned from the best of the best. And
mm,
so that was really thrilling. And I just really was very passionate about learning about the world and culture and all of those intersections. So um, it's been I would say a non-traditional career path. After I left there, I decided it was kind of burnout after 5 years and being young, and there was a lot of intensity. I worked on a lot of cover stories and
mm.
a really heavy news time. This was before.
So, so before you move into the next thing, I mean, I'm just curious about that because not a lot of people can say, first of all, that they worked for Time Inc. And also as a journalist and so many other things too, and a researcher. And so, and you're talking about your time being thing, but like, at what point? So, academic achievement. You're
Yes.
you're obviously very bright. You're changing schools, but you're achieving very quickly at a faster pace than most people, and even now professionally, it seems like as well. So like at what point for you um, were you realizing that like you're more of a creative, or did you consider yourself a creative, and do you consider yourself a creative? Because obviously that's the type of people you work with too. So how is that kind of jostling around for you as you're achieving academics, but also, very artistic in the way that you do it too?
Well, I have always been a writer and I love writing, and that is my
Mm,
creativity.
mm,
And so from a very early age, it was just a natural gift, because that's one of the things, even when I joined Time Magazine, I didn't have a journalism degree, right? But I was able to get in there and to start doing the work and contributing at a high level. And that was because of my excellent teachers in high school. Uh, so,
Gotta give you credit, man. They dealt with us at our worst,
at
or
our worst. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
So it was something that I loved. And I started to also work with, in the process of developing the stories in the magazine, I worked with the photographers and the creative director to help put the pages together. And that's
Mm,
when I started to understand how much I understood about visual creativity as well.
mm,
And they invited me into uh, these conversations to actually give my opinion, which was
mm,
really something that was really empowering, I think, at that age. And so it was something that stuck with me. So I loved working with the creative team as much as I loved working with the writers and the editorial team. And that's something that I started to just carry with me. I didn't know for sure, but I just knew that I loved working with the creative people. They were the most
mm,
fun, and they still
mm.
got stuff done.
Yeah, that's great. So, okay, so you're at Time, starting to get burned out. You're doing a bunch of cover stories, but sort of uncovering this, passion for working with creatives,
Yes.
and then even helping them in some ways. And so, then what was kind of the next phase for you after that?
So I took a hiatus from the journalism field, and I spent a year and a half in the fashion industry, actually
Okay.
working in marketing. So that's where I started to do the marketing. So that's when my creative skills started to really emerge.
Mm,
I took contract positions in marketing for Chanel, Revlon, Estee Lauder, and a clothing company that doesn't exist anymore. So just worked with all of these amazing creative people, and was asked every day to come up with some great idea to convince people to buy the product or come up with a concept. And
mm,
I found that that was something that was really natural to me. It wasn't something that I had actually discussed or even explored up to that point. But when I started to respond and people liked my ideas, then it just started to build that momentum. And that's something that I really, really enjoyed. And working with clothing designers and working with makeup artists, it was just, again, those creative people, that energy was there. It was really, really inspiring to me. But one of the
That's
things that
awesome.
I did observe as well is that there was a lack of diversity. More often than not, I was the
Mm.
only person of color in the space. And so that was an alarm bell for me. And it just, people weren't, I didn't have many negative experiences. I can't say I didn't have any, but I didn't have a whole lot of negative experiences. But it was just an observation that there was an absence of diversity in a lot of the spaces where I was. So that just took me on a path to find out where is the more diverse community. How do we bring people in? And that became part of my mission, is to find folks and to bring people in and to show up in more diverse spaces as well, so that we could work together, because I was aware of the talent that was in the Black community, especially because it was just something that was around me all of the time. And so I wanted to think more deeply about how to be more inclusive before that was anything trending.
And I can't imagine too, right? Like obviously you're on the fast track. You said through school and having to shift as, even culturally, a lot of the segregation and different things were
Yes.
changing. The landscape was changing, right? So you're familiar with that. You grew up around that, and then now, I bet even as a woman and a woman of color
Yes.
coming up through the ranks and coming up very quickly, there's probably a whole lot of challenges that you faced that many other people probably don't face or don't even realize. Which sounds like it's kind of what brought you to the space that you're in now, of really wanting to help artists and creatives and people, Black and brown, as you had said
Yes.
in the notes here, of really helping them to turn their creative passions into, I think what you said was profitable businesses, right?
Yes.
Like such a
Yes.
cool line.
Well, and that comes from this under awareness that I had about artists not feeling like they can profit from their creativity. And the more I talked to creative people and the more I moved into my own understanding of myself as a creative, that belief that people who are creative don't make money has proliferated. And
Mm.
I didn't agree with that. And there was evidence. If we look at some of the great artists, Picasso was a living successful artist. And there are other artists over the years, but that's the one that comes to me immediately. But these are people who have tremendous talent. And now, as we moved into this technology age, it's very clear that you have to have creative people in order to create products and services that people are actually going to buy. We see that, design with your smartphone and all of the things around you. There is nothing beyond with technology that doesn't require great creativity. The
Mm.
technology itself is creative, and then the packaging is creative, and that requires a certain skill set. So we're in a creative economy, and so why wouldn't the creative people profit from it? So
Mm.
understanding that, my thinking was that I had heard the term of the starving artist, and I want a world where there are no more starving artists, because there is no need. We all have intrinsic value, we have great skills, and in a world where everything requires that creative perspective, there's no reason for anyone with such talent to be lacking in any way, certainly not economically.
My dad's an artist, and I think kind of passed that off to me. Like he loved painting, was really good at it. But very similarly, his father told him, it's like, you're never going to make any money as an artist. It's a terrible thing to chase. You
Yeah.
need to hang it up. And he did, to his own regret. Right. And he was going to be able to go to a great school or all these different things. Right. Which just didn't pan out because that wasn't the direction that he went. And he's just recently, over the last couple of years or so, has gotten back into that. Like he still works his 9 to 5, but he's painting again, and like the life that comes from him just being able to express himself in that way
Yeah.
has been so obvious for me. But it's funny how quickly and easily the creative and the artist can be shut down because of that very idea that, you know, the starving artist, it's like you're not going to be able to make any money. So I love that mission. It hits home for me, you know, even personally. So I love hearing that. Um,
Absolutely.
so one of the things that I'm curious about now is we're kind of shifting into this next phase, right? You're the founder and CEO of Tenth Muse.
Yeah.
Would love to hear how you came up with that name. But in driving to help creatives and to help them create profitable businesses, kind of walk me through a little bit of what that looks like. What do you do? How are you really helping people?
So the main focus for me is in helping creatives identify the essence of their brand. I've done a lot of brand work with all the major companies that I work with, corporate brands. Time as a brand, which is something I wasn't thinking. You know, I'm a journalist, right? I started out as a journalist, so I wasn't thinking brand at the time. But as I began to grow in my career, understanding more about what the significance of brand and branding is, I recognize the importance of that and wanted to infuse that into the work that I do. And as we have moved into this space where there are so many people and there's so much competitiveness among brands, really finding those differentiators is the key to creating opportunity for oneself. And so that's something that I really want to focus on, is helping each creative find their own brand identity that works for them, and then helping them also find and connect with their target markets. Because I have found over the years that that is the greatest challenge that brands have, whether they're global brands or small brands. It is when people are asked, who is your target market? They have that terrible answer is everybody.
Everybody. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. All the time. But
Yes.
my message is good for everybody, but I can do this for
Sure.
everybody. Yeah.
Exactly. And so for me, I go straight to the budget part. I said, oh, well, how big is your budget? Because to reach everybody, you need quite a budget.
Mm,
And but you don't really need to reach everybody in order to be successful. And that's something that I think for creative people especially is helpful, actually, because they may tend to be more introverted or feel like they have a lot of ownership over their creativity, which makes sense. So
mm,
helping them understand who they really are trying to connect with allows them to feel more at ease about putting their creativity out into the world, sharing it with others.
mm,
And a lot of my work in corporate has been specifically with business to business strategies. And that's another aspect that I bring to my clients, because I am not someone to offer strategies that are focused on going out and selling one piece of art at a time, one book at a time, one thing at a time. I'm going to help you build a brand that's also going to be putting you in front of a large number of your customers at once, helping you through publicity, general publicity, but also identifying the key podcasts that are going to be relevant, that are going to connect you
mm,
with your audience, finding paid speaking opportunities, paid opportunities that come up that are from places that you may never have known about. But that's one of the things that I also recognize, is that because of the places that I have been in corporate America, I have seen where there are some
mm,
opportunities that aren't just put out in the general market. So I want to be able to create that access point for creative people in particular. Another
mm.
area of business that I did work in was in the licensing industry in publishing, which for me, that meant that I was working on the Goosebumps books for a while, if you're familiar with them.
Oh, I'm
And
familiar. I read all of them and watched them.
yes.
Yeah.
And so my work there was to help with the intellectual property, the Goosebumps brand, develop products, right? So that licensing opportunity for developing your t-shirts, your hats, your games, your toys. So the licensing industry, which also expands into entertainment. So the television, that's a licensing opportunity. And so many people to this day still don't know a lot about that particular opportunity. And because I spent some time there and I really enjoyed working with that particular industry and that particular brand. And so I saw that there are these missed opportunities. I put on exhibits at the big licensing exhibitions, and there again was an absence of diversity. And that was decades ago. And I actually went to the big licensing show in Las Vegas last year. And there was a little bit more diversity, but still there's a need for more representation. And that comes with education as well. And so that's a key part of my work too. So I want to help identify those opportunities for access. I want to provide education, and I want to make connections. That's a gift that I have because I have worked in so many different industries and have maintained relationships and grown relationships with people in different roles, with different skill sets. And I'm just curious about people. So I just collect people. People say I'm a connector, but I'm a collector. I'm really a collector.
Yeah, in the safest way.
In the
Like, yeah,
safest
you're
way.
collecting people in the safest
Collecting
way. Yeah.
relationships, collecting
There you go.
people's friendships. Yes, that's what I do. And
Love
knowledge
that.
along the way, because I am a lifelong learner.
And that, I feel like that's such a great sign of somebody, right, who doesn't ever think that they've reached the top of understanding or knowledge or otherwise. It's like, the people that I would love to and continue to surround myself with are the people who say, I still have so much more to learn, but let me impart to you what I've learned already.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So a couple of things that you had touched on just now, which would be really helpful, I guess, with our audience too. I mean, the show is elevate your brand to accelerate your journey to success, right? Because as we create that, and now when we talk about branding, we talk about specifically in the form of sharing your story. Your brand is your story.
Yes.
And so I'd be curious, just with your own experience and what you've seen as you're working with these artists, like, and for the artists that are listening, like what are some maybe tips or strategies or things in which they could even start now of understanding that? Like what would be a place to start? Because it sounds like a lot of times they don't even know where that would be.
Sure. Well, I think one of the key things to start, I actually wrote a little ebook called How to Launch, and it is focused on how you get started. And one of the biggest activities, and I love to have people do this first, is that you take an audit of your life and your skills, because at any time in your career you have accumulated some knowledge, you've made some connections, or you've collected some people, and you've gotten some skills, or you have completed a project. And because we're just going about our lives so busy, a lot of times we just don't take stock of what it is that we have actually accomplished. And we haven't taken stock of what it is that we might feel passionate about. We may have put the passion aside because of responsibilities or obligations. So I think it's important to start with, wherever you are, do an audit of what it is that you have going for you. What are your assets? And just documenting them out in all the categories of your life. It is what you're learning, your skills are, your education, the relationships that you have, the affiliations that you have, those kinds of things, and the works that you've accomplished that you're proud of, because we don't even take a lot of time to celebrate our big accomplishments. And so we forget about them, put them on a shelf, and just keep going forward. So it's really important to do that audit first. I think that's the key, because when you lay it all out, you will either realize that, yeah, there's some things I really don't want to do, and I don't want to go back that way, or you realize that there's something that you've forgotten that you really loved, that you could pick up on and really bloom from there.
So as somebody's sort of understanding this about themselves, uncovering what some of those skill sets are, or things that they're passionate about. How does that play into what your brand is, from your perspective?
Absolutely. So, what that does is it allows you to identify what is unique about you, right? We are in a time where everybody is a creator, right? Or people have these, there's 100 million marketers, everybody's a marketer.
Mm.
But what is your differentiator? That is how that audit can really help you to really point to the things that you have done that nobody else has done, and that is how you get to position yourself and define your brand, so that when you have a conversation, you get to go on podcasts or you go out into the world, you can do an introduction of yourself that stands out a little bit differently than the next person, which makes you memorable, which is the start
Mm.
of building that brand. You have to have something that lands with people, that isn't just the same old thing that everybody's heard.
So how has branding worked for you? Obviously, coming out of corporate America, you're starting your own business, and now I've been running that for a while. So, in what ways have you seen, by having your brand, that it's been able to open up doors for you, and help you get to where you are today?
So that I love that you asked me that question, because when I started out on this cycle of my business, from corporate America, I had a vision that I was going to continue to produce these art related visual artist events in Miami, which I had produced several of them during Miami Art Week and Art Basel,
Okay.
previous years. And that was my vision of what I was going to do. And the first day that I started out in my business, I got a call from someone who wanted help with their book, marketing their book, launching their book, and positioning them. And what's really interesting is that I, I have a master's degree in publishing. I have worked in publishing for many years, and I didn't think that that was going to be where my growth was at all. So there was a pause
You
there.
love writing. You have a master's degree in publishing. You worked for one of the largest magazines, and but still, like all of us, it's like it was right there, but we didn't even think of it,
But you didn't
right?
even think of it. There's a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which I love, and that
Hmm.
she calls the person the shadow artist. I have been living in the shadow of others, helping them, and just
Mm.
didn't recognize my own gift, forgot about it, put it aside. And so that's kind of how I feel like that was kind of the calling to come out into this realm that you really have knowledge and can contribute and that you love. And
Mm.
that really was the first year for me, was really getting comfortable and clear that that is a differentiator for me.
Mm.
I know this work so well that I took it for granted. And I think that that's what happened with a lot of people, right? If you have a really great skill and talent, naturally, it seems so easy that you just figure everybody can do it.
Mm.
And then you learn that no, that's not the case. And, no, most people don't have a master's degree in publishing. Most people didn't work with, the editor of the Harry Potter book series, or get to work with all of these great people and learn from them directly and maintain those relationships. And so, and to get into the rooms and have conversations with all of these people who are industry leaders. So that's something that I absolutely have. That's a differentiator for me. And
Mm.
at the same time, because of my love of the visual arts, and really, going back to explaining the name of my company, 10th Muse, there are 9 muses in mythology, which represent the different aspects of our creativity. And
Mm.
the 10th muse for me is the muse for all of the muses. So I am here to help all of
Love
those
that.
creatives harness their talent. That's why the company is named that way. And so there's definitely this recognition of the ability to create content for storytelling, for journalism, for books, and all of that, and the editorial, uh, but also tying in the visuals as well. Books require cover designs. Children's books require illustration. There's so much intersection. We have digital media now. So you have all of these intersections of creativity. There's photography. So recognizing that I can help all kinds of creative talent harness those gifts and find interesting and unique ways to have them intersect. That's what I love to do. And so that was what my vision was for when I started the business, and being able to bring my unique perspective in publishing, along with my experience with marketing and branding, and offering that to the creative community, which typically are also outsiders, right? If they're the outsiders, they're not in these spaces, and they're not even trying to be in these spaces. So I spend time going to look for them, but that's okay. Finding the right people, finding that talent, encouraging and motivating them to pursue their goals and their dreams, is something that I just love to do, and it just gives me a lot of joy.
A muse to the muses. I love
Yes.
that. That's so cool. So what's on the horizon for you then? I mean, as you're, obviously wanting to reach more people, working with authors as you're talking about, and other creatives, what is the next chapter kind of look like as you're moving into that, and 2024 even and beyond?
Sure. So I'm taking a two-pronged approach, because one of the things that I recognize as well is that people are in a mode where a lot of people are on limited budgets when they're starting out. And a lot of people start out not really thinking about being a business or a brand. And so budgets are limited. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually getting ready to launch a book marketing boot camp, which is a 10-week program to work with a group to help them plan on the launching for their next book or project. And I'm calling it a book marketing boot camp because those are the folks who are the primary folks that I work with. But I invite anybody who's creative, who's getting ready to launch a show or an event that's going to support their creative work, to participate. And that's something that is going to make it accessible, help people to start thinking more strategically and thinking more like a business, because it's very interesting. With authors, I have this conversation often where they want to write their book, they want to publish, but once they hit publish, they don't know what to do, or they sit and wait for somebody to buy the books and they don't come and they don't know why. And so I like to teach the process of marketing and how it even gets started before the publishing actually happens, and carrying them through that process so that they can have success. Because if they do it once, then they can put it on a repeat and really, really grow. And that's what I want them to do. And whether that means them being successful exclusively as an author, or whether it means that that's the catalyst for speaking opportunities or the programs or initiatives that they're interested in, and having that book as a tool to open doors for them, that's what I want to help them strategize about and figure out what's the best approach for them. So that's one thing. And then the other aspect is to focus on targeting more enterprise level clients, hybrid publishers, small publishers that that represent multiple artists, but who don't have an in-house marketing team. So I'm working on building my client base in that regard, to get more engagement for publishers who are working with diverse writers and artists.
That's awesome. And I'm excited to see how that works. Obviously you bring so much talent, so much insight to that conversation, and can really help so many more people, turn their creative process into a profitable business. And so I'm excited to see where that goes. Well, I guess the last question here before we wrap up is just simply this. If somebody wanted to get a copy of your ebook, How to Launch, or if they wanted to get in contact with you or anything like that to find out more, what would be the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to email me at Tresa@tenthmuseenterprises.com. I know that's a long one, but once you type it in once, you're good, right?
We'll have it pop up on the video. So
Excellent. I am in the process of updating the book, so it will be available next month. So just email me and let me know you're interested, and I'll make sure that it's available once I'm done publishing. And you can always follow me on Instagram at Muse with Me, and connect with me on LinkedIn. And I would love to meet anybody, answer any questions, and start a conversation to help with those strategies, to help those creative entrepreneurs launch, scale, and grow. That's what I'm here for.
Launch, scale, and grow. Great. Well, Tresa, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking with you and just hearing about what you're doing to have such an impact in the lives of creatives, so they can have an impact in their communities and beyond as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time out today to join me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Zack.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for tuning in today. And as always, if you found this helpful or if you liked it, please like, subscribe, share it with friends, family, anybody who you think would benefit from this. And until next time, keep elevating and accelerating. Cheers.